Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. It's Friday night, and we here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, still holding class. That's right, every single night here on the channel at 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday on YouTube. We hold Night School. It's a deep dive conversation into the most urgent issues, the most pressing subjects, the most controversial topics, the most intense debates going on in the world today. And like every day, we got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody, especially for watching on a Friday night, because I know y'all got a lot of other things you could be doing. And I'm always grateful that you all support me. If you're watching this on one of our other platforms, specifically Twitter, I want to ask you, if you want to, if you can, slide over to YouTube. By sliding over to YouTube, you get to be part of our conversation. You get to join the chat conversation. You get to make use of our emojis. You get to make use of our super chats. You get to make use of the like and subscribe button, which I'd love all y'all to do. In fact, if you're watching right now, hit the like button right now if you hear me, and if you're happy to be here on a Friday night, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because some of y'all come here every night lurking and y'all ain't subscribed. Subscribing don't cost you a penny, brother. Subscribing is free 99, sister. Just hit the subscribe button. All right, y'all, let's start off where we ended yesterday, and that is with President Joe Biden. As most of you know, yesterday, Joe Biden drew a lot of attention, both domestically and internationally, from his supporters and from his open enemies when he gave a few, I don't want to say controversial, certainly embarrassing remarks. The first one, as we talked about yesterday, was when he attempted to introduce the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Here's what y'all's president said instead.
Now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
So that was the first moment. And the moment he uttered those words, we weren't talking about NATO. We weren't talking about Zelensky. We weren't even talking about Putin. We were talking about Biden and whether he once again engaged in a verbal gaffe that was a window into his mental state, into his health, into his capacity to run the White House. There are people, of course, who I think quite accurately say, look, we all make gaffes. We all call people the wrong name. It happens. Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill. My position is I'm not convinced of President Biden's mental state, but this isn't the best evidence of him having some declining health condition. He could have just said the wrong name. My concern is that at a moment where people are questioning his mental health and those questions are causing his polling numbers to dip, and he is all but ensuring a Donald Trump presidency, that it might be wise to not make those kind of gaffes, and that the stakes attached to those mistakes are very, very high, that he can't afford those types of mistakes. So he has to be extra disciplined, extra thoughtful, extra focused. Problem is, I'm not sure he can do that. He can do that in the 90s. I'm definitely not sure if he can do that now. So there's that moment. And then at a moment where everybody is saying, okay, we got questions. He did that heavily curated Stephanopoulos interview on ABC last Friday. He hasn't been available to the press. He seems like he's hiding from us. Well, Biden says, you know what? I got you covered. Let's have a press conference. And in the midst of that press conference, your president said something else that once again raised significant.
Wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
Now, you might be confused there. He was asked a question about staying in the race and a question about moving out of the way with, and letting Vice President Kamala Harris step in. And again, I'm going to play for you one more time. Here's what y'all president said.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
So once again, he's already been called out for the Zelensky-Putin gaffe. Now he says, I would not have chosen Vice President Trump. Now, you could make the same argument he made with Putin. I just got Trump on my mind so much I said Vice President Trump. Or you could say he can't control this anymore. He can't stop making these mistakes. He's confusing people. Now, if he's confusing names and words, I mean, that seems like a pretty big thing to do when you got your finger on the button, when you have the ability to launch wars. I don't want somebody who makes those kinds of mistakes on a consistent basis. But if they're just verbal snafus, if they're just mild, mistakes, I'm not tripping about it. But again, his insiders have said they're concerned. His advisors have said they're concerned. His longstanding friends have said they're concerned. His most generous supporters, both financially and politically, have been expressing their concern. And so it's not just this mistake, it's what this mistake stands on top of. So in the aftermath of that, there's been even more blowback. The calls to bring up someone off the Democratic bench and make them the nominee have gotten louder. The questions about President Biden's health have gotten more intense. And the fears that people have of what will happen if President Biden stays in the race have gotten more profound. So it's incredibly important at this stage in the race, before we get into a Democratic convention, before we get to a Republican convention, for there to be a very clear and unequivocal answer to the question of who is running for the Democratic side in this presidential race. Will President Biden stay in the race? And will the prominent Democrats support him if he does? Well, that question was engaged in a very interesting way today on the Today Show by South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn. Congressman Clyburn, as you know, 4 years ago, was a major reason why President Biden was able to pull out a primary victory. President Biden's support was waning. The American people, and certainly the Democratic voting base, was not entirely clear that they wanted Biden. A lot of people wanted Bernie. A lot of people wanted other options, like Warren. And so it wasn't until that third race, you got Iowa back then you had New Hampshire, then you had South Carolina, where Biden was able to get some momentum and push Bernie Sanders back a few steps. That happened because James Clyburn stood up and endorsed Joe Biden. That happened because Black women voters in particular endorsed Joe Biden. Joe Biden's political fortunes and future stands on the shoulders of Black Southern voters, and they're all indebted to the work and the support of Jim Clyburn. He better do something special for Jim every Christmas. That's all I'm going to say. Well, Clyburn once again stepped up to allay some fears, to convince voters that there was nothing to be afraid of, to offer some words of support and insight for Joe Biden in the midst of what has become a very intense political storm for him. So Mr. Clyburn appears on the Today Show, and here's what he says.
Should that conversation continue?
No, it shouldn't.
The conversation should be over.
No, the conversation should focus on the record of this administration, on the alternative to his election, and let Joe Biden continue to make his own decisions about his future. He's earned that right, and I am going to give him that much respect.
So listen to what Mr. Clyburn just said. The question was clear. Should we stop asking the question about whether Joe Biden is running or not? Is this a dead issue? And Clyburn could have just said, yeah, it's a dead issue, leave it alone. But no, he said something slightly different. He said, and this is where I think it gets very interesting. He said, the conversation should focus on the record of this administration. Cool. On the alternative of the election, I agree. And let Joe Biden continue to make his own decisions about his future. He's earned that right, and I'm going to give him that much respect. That last piece is the tell. Every prominent Democrat has done the same thing. They keep saying Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, but it's up to him to let us know what he wants to do. Or we support Joe Biden, but he needs to make a final decision. Or we love Joe Biden, but we love him so much we're going to let him decide on his own fate. They all support Joe Biden with this, not just a caveat, but with a peak of possibility that Biden might be considering an alternative approach or an alternative outcome for his candidacy. If you're sure Biden is staying in the race, why do you say, I'm going to let him make his own decisions about his future? It sounds like he's saying, I support Biden unless he does something different, and I'll wait to see if he does something different. It's a few weeks before the convention. If President Biden is considering leaving this race or considering holding space or opening space rather for another candidate, he needs to do so right now. Because in 34 days, it's going to be some hellified debate, intense struggle, and damn near to the death fights over who's going to get this nomination if Joe Biden steps out. And the better job he does in preparing us for that, the better a job we'll all do as a nation in figuring this thing out. So when Clyburn says the same thing, Pelosi did the same thing. Well, Biden needs to make a final decision. Biden keeps saying, I made a final decision. But for some reason, all of his friends keep saying, well, let's see what Joe does. They're like, they basically are saying it through the public, are you sure? They're continuing to hint through media that they're not sure. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the Today Show picked up on that. And for once, a good job was done at asking a follow-up question. Listen to this.
I'm riding with Biden no matter what direction he goes, no matter what method he takes. I'm with Joe Biden. And if he were to change.
Did you leave the door open just a little bit for these continued questions about President Biden? Because he said he made up his
what I
mind.
heard.
And you're saying.
And I took him at his word. I took him at his word. And that's why I am.
But did y'all peep that? She heard the same thing I heard. Because sometimes y'all think I just be making stuff up. She heard the same thing I heard. Like, you're opening the door for this. Listen to what she said.
Did you leave the door open just a little bit for these continued questions about President Biden? Because he said he made up his mind. And you're saying.
And I took him at his word. I took him at his word. And that's why I am all in. I'm riding with Biden no matter what direction he goes, no matter what method he takes. I'm with Joe Biden. And if he were to change his mind, I'll just answer the question that I would be all in for the vice president.
Did you leave the door open just?
So he did two things there. Again, smooth. Jim Clyburn ain't no joke. One of them smooth old school Q dogs, man. First thing he did is he now said what he had to say, which I respect and appreciate, right? He didn't back away from the question. He didn't duck the question. He said, look, I'm riding with Biden. I'm staying with him until something different happens. But once again, he opened the possibility that something else could happen. He said, and if something else happens, then I'll support the vice president. He didn't say I'll support the Democratic nominee. He didn't say I'll just support who the people choose. He didn't say I'll support who Biden selects. He didn't say I support whoever polls the highest. He said I support the vice president. This is a consistent move. This is a consistent move that Jim Clyburn has made. By the way, at the bottom of the screen, it's been saying Jim Clyburn saves Trump. It should have said Biden. I see the irony in that. Y'all could say I'm losing my mind too. Maybe I shouldn't run for president either because I got Biden and Trump mixed up. But Jim Clyburn, again, is attempting to save Biden by honoring his choice, even if it's a bad one. But notice Jim Clyburn is unrelenting and unflinching. He didn't miss a beat in saying, once again, as he's been saying for weeks, if Biden steps down, Kamala got next. I'm not allowing for any debates. There's not going to be any struggles in the convention. Gavin Newsom, wait your turn. Josh Shapiro, have a seat. Pete Buttigieg, you got to wait. Elizabeth Warren, nope. Hillary Clinton, hell no, maybe. He's saying the person is Kamala, and that is that. And when you hear that, again, it doesn't make anybody confident that this thing has been resolved. But one thing is for sure, Jim Clyburn, once again, is saving Joe Biden's behind, and he's giving him space to maybe do something different than many of us want, but that might need to be done. All right, so let's move on. In the aftermath of all of this foolishness, and a lot of this is foolishness. I'm laughing at some of the comments. I respect you, Lanzetta. Yo, my mental decline has been confirmed. I could confirm that to y'all months ago. My decision to do this show every day is probably a sign of my craziness, but Joe Biden is doing his best to. Let's move on. Let me take a second. Let me count to 3. So in case we edit this, it'll look cool. 1, 2, 3. In the aftermath of all of the political uproar over his gaffes and mistakes, Joe Biden is doing his absolute best to act like Donald Trump. That's right. Joe Biden went to Detroit. He gave a massive speech in front of a huge audience, and he did his best to appear unbothered. He did his best to roar up the crowd. He did his best to tell off-the-cuff jokes, or at least make them look off the cuff. Again, he seemed like he was trying to conjure the approach, maybe mimic the style of a guy you already know. His name is Donald Trump. The question for all of us is this a good choice? But before we get to the quality of the choice, I want to give you a couple of examples of what I mean when I say he is doing his best Donald Trump impersonation. I think first, again, massive crowd. That's great. There's nothing wrong with having a massive crowd, right? But listen to what happens in this massive crowd. It's not, I'm not, let me be clear, y'all, because I know y'all be riding with Biden. I'm not blaming Joe Biden for this, but I am saying this is not a good sign.
There's so much of my narrative, my campaign is falling apart, they say. I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party, the only Democrat or Republican who has beaten Donald Trump ever. And I'm going to beat him again. I know him. Donald Trump is a loser.
So I think the thing that I found most disturbing about that clip, and again, you've got the crowd roaring. You want to remind people that you have energy and that you're charming and that you're funny and that all of that stuff. I get it. I get it. Because again, you got to do that if you're Joe Biden and you've had this terrible 14-day stretch. But when he stands in front of there and just screams, Donald Trump is a loser, the personal attack, the ad hominem attack, I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. I'm not sensitive. I'm not a snowflake. I'm just saying I don't know if it's going to work. I think it might be a bad strategy. Again, I have no problem with it if it works. Donald Trump is a loser. Donald Trump, and he knows that calling Donald Trump a loser is going to get his goat and knock him off his square. I get it. But I'm not sure that approach works for Joe Biden. The next thing he does after he says he's a loser is he stands there and kind of smiles as the crowd cheers, lock him up, lock him up, lock him up. I get the joke. I get the irony. I get the intertextuality from 8 years ago when Donald Trump was absolutely not only listening to a crowd say lock her up for Hillary Clinton, but also at times saying that they should lock her up, even though he denies having done that. So I get the joke, I get the humor, I get how it's going to just stick in the craw of Donald Trump. And anytime Donald Trump has a bad night, I'm happy with that. So I get all of that. But I'm not sure that it's the best strategy for winning this race. And I'll tell you why in a second. Now, in the midst of all of that, he also, again, reminded voters, forget about what Jim Clyburn said or didn't say. Forget about what Nancy Pelosi said or didn't say. Forget about what George Clooney said or didn't say. Forget about what the New York Times said or didn't say. Forget about what everybody has said or didn't say. He offered his own unequivocal answer to whether he's running or not.
There's a lot of speculation lately. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? Here's my answer. I am running, and we're going to win. I'm not going to change that. In fact.
Now, I know some of you are like, see, problem solved. See, he was unequivocal. Yeah, he was. But here's the thing you got to remember. Every candidate says they're staying in the race until they leave the race. How many primaries have you seen where a person loses Iowa, loses New Hampshire, loses South Carolina, and says, I'm staying in this race to the bitter end. I ain't going nowhere. You ain't seen the last of me. You can't get rid of me that easy. I am here, and I got a pathway to victory. And then they lose the next one. And suddenly Nevada's not good to them, and they're out of the race. Sometimes, an hour after they give that speech, they put a press release out saying, I can't do it anymore. Things have changed. Candidates say whatever they have to do, say to hold on to the last drop of possibility, and at times, not this case, but other times, to hold on to the last nickel of fundraising. So please understand that just because Joe Biden says that he ain't going nowhere does not mean he ain't going nowhere. He could be going somewhere tomorrow. But this is the part that I thought was really problematic for Joe Biden and his campaign. You know, saying you're going to run, fine. Calling Donald Trump a loser, okay. But he's starting to mix it up a little bit more than you might want to. He got real Trumpian at the next part of his speech. Listen to this.
Here he is. What he intends to do. Folks, Donald Trump is a convicted criminal. He's convicted.
See, right there, the lock him up makes sense. That ain't my issue.
He was convicted by a jury of his peers of 34 felonies for paying hush money to a porn star and hiding from voters in 2016. Donald Trump was found liable for sexual assault by a judge who told us not to be fooled by Trump's brushing it off. Here's what the judge wrote, quote, the judge in that case wrote, Mr. Trump attempt to minimize sexual abuse, finding it frivolous. Mr. Trump raped her. No, I mean, it's the judge's language, not mine. He raped her, as many people understand the word rape. Folks, Donald Trump is a business fraud. He lost his license to do business in New York State. Been fined over $400 million for giving false information to banks. And he's still facing charge for mishandling classified information, which is a criminal offense. He's still facing charge for his role in January 6th trying to overthrow the outcome of the 2020 election. He's still facing charges in Georgia for election interference. Remember his phone call? I just need 11,780 votes. Name me another president that's done any of that. Look, if you want to know how bad a businessman Trump really is, just think about this. He inherited millions of dollars, going to squander it. He's filed bankruptcy 6 times. He even went bankrupt running a casino. I didn't think that was possible.
That's a solid joke. He went bankrupt running a casino. I didn't know that was possible. That's a solid joke, I gotta say. But, or a solid line. But let's be clear. Here's why I don't agree with this strategy that Biden is taking on it. And I want you all to pay attention to what's happened here. You notice Biden is taking a much more direct, ad hominem, personalized attack on Donald Trump. There's a few thoughts here. One, I understand the motivation behind it, right? Biden is losing, and he knows he's losing. He's losing big right now. He doesn't want to admit it, but he knows it deep down. His staff and campaign and administration absolutely know that he's losing big right now. He's not on a path to victory. He's, down in all the swing states. He's now losing in states that he won, three major purple states that he won last election. There's no path to victory for him right now. Times can change. Biden can absolutely win this race, but it ain't looking good. It looks very, very bad right now. So Biden realizes he needs to take a different approach. And because part of why his numbers are low is because of the belief that he's not sharp and that he's slow and old and not quick-witted, and the fact that Trump argued circles around him at the last debate. Even though Trump lied every few seconds and misrepresented almost everything, Trump didn't say anything of value. He just packaged his BS in a really shiny way. But because of that, Biden is now trying to look sharper. So he's telling more jokes. He's showing more energy. He's inspiring the crowd. He's trying to out-Trump Trump. He's trying to out-Trump Trump. You can't out-Trump Trump. He's also trying to remind the voters of why they should choose him. Mentioning Trump's, if you notice, he went into the very gritty details of Trump's sexual assault allegations. He went into the specific details of his financial improprieties. He talked about his failures, his bankruptcies. He talked about a whole bunch of stuff that he normally doesn't do. Here's the problem. America already knows all of this. There is nothing that Joe Biden is going to say on that campaign trail about Donald Trump that the whole country doesn't know. Just like last time, he got caught on tape saying he was going to grab women by their private parts. He had his sexual exploits exposed. He demonstrated no knowledge of domestic or foreign policy. He is a clear racist. He's obviously unqualified to be president. And yet, people voted for him. Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies, and he not only gained in the polls, he gained in fundraising, he gained in mass support, and he expanded his lead. The people who vote for Donald Trump don't care about these things. Now, you could argue, and I think this is a credible argument, that there are people who want to vote for, who are Biden supporters, who are losing their faith in Biden, and Biden is just saying, look, before you stay home, or before you vote third party, or before you even consider voting for someone else like Donald Trump, thinking now they're about the same, I'll take the one who's sharper. Let's not forget how awful Donald Trump is. Let's not forget how terrible a president and a person Donald Trump is. There is value in reminding people that these are not opposite sides of the same coin, that Trump and Biden aren't the same. I get the value in that. But when Biden does it in the way that he just did it, where he's spending a lot of time sort of, talking about the worst parts of Donald Trump, mocking him, as he's doing in this video right here, just trying to, doing the kind of off the cuff, make jokes, entertain the crowd at his opponent's expense kind of thing. Listen to this.
He says he's a nice guy. Trump would rather be electrocuted than eaten by a shark. You know that whole thing, remember that? Poor Donald. He can't even watch TV this week because of Shark Week. And by the way,
again, not a bad joke. Some of his best material in weeks. But again, it plays to Trump's strengths, not Biden's. And I'll tell you why. It's not just that it's ineffective, because if you say, well, if the public already knows nothing, no harm, no foul, there is a foul. One, when you play in the muck like that, you invite Trump to get dirtier. you invite Trump to go lower. When you go low, Trump goes to the flow. And I don't think you want to do that with Donald Trump. As they say in the South, when you wrestle with a pig, you both get dirty, and the pig likes it. Donald Trump is a pig. Also, the more off-the-cuff remarks you make, the more jokes you make, the more you go ad hominem, and the more you do a lot of yapping that's out of your comfort zone, as Joe Biden right now in 2024, you are greatly increasing the chances of a flub. You are greatly increasing the chances of a mistake. You are greatly increasing the chances of doing something that backfires on you. So you go out to come for Trump, and your mistakes end up coming for you, right? The jail you built for me, the one you're gonna rot in, to quote another great Black feminist philosopher. So it's a bad idea. And then there's one more reason. Joe Biden represents the alternative to Donald Trump at every level. He's supposed to be experienced. Donald Trump knows nothing. He's supposed to be mature and disciplined. Donald Trump is supposed to be wild and erratic. He is supposed to be presidential, and Donald Trump is supposed to be a reality star. Now, at this point, they both have the same amount of experience as president. In fact, Trump has a few months more. But at the end of the day, we don't see Trump in the presidential light that we see Obama or Reagan or Bush or Clinton or whomever, right? He's sort of the outlier of all U.S. presidents. Even George W. Bush, I said Bush twice, not because I'm crazy, because I mean George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. Even George W. Bush, we thought he was silly and incurious and anti-intellectual, but he still felt like a president. Donald Trump is something else. So the reminder that Joe Biden should be offering the American people is the implicit reminder that he is a statesman, that he is a president, that he is a leader, and that Trump is not. And when he wallows in the mud with Trump, he undermines that authority. He undermines his leadership. He undermines his moral and intellectual authority a little bit. He compromises his gravitas. And I don't think it's going to work well for his campaign. This feels like a desperation move. This feels like a Hail Mary. And I worry that it's not going to work out very well for President Biden. Don't be President Trump 2.0. Be Joe Biden 1.0. Just be the best version of that. Be the recharged version. Be the updated software version, right? And I think you can still win. I'm just not sure if those conditions can be met by President Biden. And I say again, my goal here is not to ensure that Biden loses or that Biden gets out of the race. My goal here is to ensure that Donald Trump never enters the White House again. That is my goal. I want Donald Trump to never enter the White House again. We cannot return to a Trump presidency. And I don't believe, as of right now, that Biden can stop a Trump presidency. So we got to figure out whatever we can do. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not beholden to the Democratic Party. Damn sure not a Republican. My interest is in justice, freedom, peace, safety, dignity, prosperity for the most vulnerable people in this world. And we can't get that. We can't do that. If Biden mounts a lame duck campaign or a weak opposition to Donald Trump, and Trump mollywops him all the way back into the White House. And that's what we're looking at right now. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with a couple more quick stories before we say goodnight on Night School. Stay right here. right, family, it's time for the War on Gaza Report. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, and usually on Night School, we offer a breakdown of the latest updates in Israel's ongoing war, not just in Gaza, but on Gaza. As I often say and remind us, as many people have said around the world, this is not a war with the Palestinian people. This is a war on the Palestinian people. And we do everything we can to give you updates that expand our knowledge beyond what corporate media offers, that expand our coverage beyond what mainstream outlets provide. We begin the War on Gaza Report, as we always begin, with the numbers. As of right now, 38,345 people have been killed in the Gaza Strip since October 7th. 38,345. The death toll in Israel from the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th is estimated at 1,139. And while that number has not changed in 8 months, the number of Palestinians killed every day in Gaza goes up. Every day. There's not been one night where a Palestinian hasn't been killed. There hasn't been one night where less than 10 Palestinians have been killed. There hasn't been a night where less than 20 Palestinians have been killed. In addition to the high death toll and the growing death toll, we also have seen 88,295 Palestinians wounded in the war on Gaza since October 7th. And on top of that, we also have to account for the 10,000 Palestinians who remain under the rubble of the Gaza Strip after it's been destroyed. That means that those 38,000 people are accompanied by another 10,000. We're much closer to 50,000 dead Palestinians than we are 38,000 dead Palestinians. We have to account for that. We have to tell the truth about that. Israeli forces are accused of deliberately targeting displaced Palestinians in Gaza City, where dozens of bodies have been recovered after attacks on the city's Tel El-Hawa neighborhood. Again, for days, really for weeks, but certainly for the last few days, the neighborhood of Tel El-Hawa has been under extraordinary attack by the Israeli military. The Gaza civil defense teams have moved in to rescue survivors. They have found dozens of people killed, mostly families, women, and children. Some of the bodies have been eaten by dogs. I don't say that to be grotesque or to provide unnecessary provocation, but to give you a sense that, again, this isn't a war on crazy terrorists. We have families dying, babies dying, grandmothers dying. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking at here. According to sources, at least 60 bodies were counted. Some bodies were buried on the spot. Others were taken to hospitals. There was an evacuation order by Israeli military forces earlier in the week. But again, as I've said repeatedly, an evacuation order means little when everyone is homeless, when the entire region has been destroyed, and where there's no safe corridors anywhere. So let's not pretend that this is somehow Palestinians ignoring an evacuation order or Israeli military, demonstrating its moral commitments. We're the most moral army in the world. None of it is true. None of it is true. Anyway, the Director General of the Gaza Government Media Office, his name is Ismail El-Thawabta, has accused the Israeli military forces of carrying out a, quote, planned massacre in Gaza City. Again, based on the fact that at least 60 bodies have been found, based on the fact that the innocent men, women, and children, families were attacked. Based on these factors, it's somewhat inconceivable, implausible that this was an unavoidable set of casualties. But instead, it feels much as the international community has suggested for months now, if not years, that this is a genocide. 4 aid workers from UK humanitarian organization, El Khair organization, were killed in an Israeli raid near Khan Yunis, which is in southern Gaza. That's according to Al Jazeera's correspondents. They, of course, were in contact with medical workers at the hospital, and I believe the emergency teams on the ground. Again, 4 aid workers from a humanitarian organization have been killed. Once again, as we saw with the World Central Kitchen, oftentimes the world attention doesn't get fixed on what's happening here until innocent people die, until outsiders die, until non-Palestinians die, and sadly, until white people die. I don't want anybody to die, but I do hope that the world is paying attention and we can finally do something to end this morally indefensible, strategically unwise, politically unsustainable, ethically atrocious genocidal war. All right, family, we're gonna take one quick break, and we come back. We're gonna talk about Jalen Brunson. He just made a big sacrifice for the New York Knicks. And I'm gonna talk about what it means, not just for sports, but for labor. All right, family. As you know, it is the NBA offseason, and for the last 13 days, the NBA offseason has been marked by a deep, intense free agency spree. Teams from all over the NBA have done everything they can to sweep up the hottest free agents, to put together the most talented teams, all against the backdrop of the USA basketball team coming together for its Olympic run. All kinds of stuff is happening in basketball that we need to talk about. And also, of course, on the WNBA side, we need to also talk about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. It appears, based on the latest numbers I read today, by the way, that Angel Reese has surpassed Caitlin Clark in the most significant advanced metrics. And given that and her historic streak of double-doubles, double-figure points and rebounds, Angel Reese looked like she's in the lead for Rookie of the Year. Now, I don't know if she's going to get it. Caitlin Clark is still fighting. Caitlin Clark dropped a triple-double last week. Caitlin Clark, I was just looking today, had 7 assists in the first quarter. She seems to be hitting her stride as well. And she has the public opinion and the media behind her. I would love to see either person win. I'm just happy to see women's basketball elevated. But as we talk about men's basketball, for a moment, today was a moment where Jalen Brunson did something extraordinary. For those who don't know, Jalen Brunson, the former Villanova player, is now the star of the New York Knicks. He left the Dallas Mavericks a little while ago, a couple seasons ago, and has emerged as one of the most talented players in the NBA. He is a darling of New York. He is a star of the next generation of NBA players. He plays hard. He plays well. He's a dynamic scorer. He makes sacrifices. He's humble, cool kid. And of course, his father was an NBA player, Rick Brunson, who was a starting point guard for Temple University for 4 years and was had a long and successful NBA career. So Jalen Brunson is already loved. But then today we got a Woj bomb. We got hit with a Woj bomb. If y'all don't know what a Woj bomb is, in the sports world, Adrian Wojnarowski is the preeminent NBA reporter and insider at this point. I know Sham's going to say something different, but I'm just saying for now, Adrian is that guy. And he dropped an update that shook the basketball world. Damn sure shook all them annoying ass New York Knicks fans. Here was the Woj bomb that we just got. I want to make sure y'all see this. I want to make sure y'all see the Woj bomb here. I'm going to pull it up. It says, in case you missed it, in a largely unprecedented financial concession. I'm going to zoom in even more so y'all can see that. In a largely unprecedented financial concession to give roster flexibility to a contender, New York Knicks star Jalen Brunson has agreed on a 4-year, $156 million extension. His agent, Sam Rose of CAA, tells ESPN $113 million less guaranteed than he's eligible to receive in 1 year. Wow. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. Wow. And the reason I keep saying wow, I want you to hear what just happened. This man, this young man, just left $113 million on the table. He could have waited to next year to sign his deal. He would have gotten 5 years instead of 4, and he would have gotten an extra $113 million over 4 or 5 years. That's a lot of money. That's $1/10 billion. Let's talk about what that means before we go. From a basketball perspective, it's a game changer for the New York Knicks. Teams can pretty much afford to have 2 to 3 max players. They can have 3 guys who make the maximum salary. The Knicks are not a team of a bunch of max guys. They have Jalen Brunson, who was supposed to be the max guy, and they have a bunch of guys who, I won't call them role players, but they're systems guys, right? You got the Mikal Bridges, you got the Harts, you got the, you got maybe Julius Randle might be considered, although I'm not big on him. But the idea here is that you got a bunch of guys that can play. It's like the old Indiana Pacers teams. It's like the old Portland Trailblazers teams with Rasheed Wallace and Bonzi Wells in them. It's basically the idea that we got a deep team with a lot of talent, with a lot of pieces that can kill you at any time. The problem is on most NBA franchises, you can't pay everybody. At some point, somebody ascends, and because you got to pay the best player a gajillion dollars, them top 8 players now get reduced to top 6. And then somebody else says, well, you're paying me good money, but I can be a star and take all the shots over there. Or we won a championship. I want out now. I want to make my own way. All of these things are possible. All of these things happen. So the Knicks' ability to keep all of their players in contracts that are lower than the max, that are more generous to the team than they are to the players, means that the Knicks will be contenders for a very long time. I'm not sure they're going to be good enough to beat the Celtics. I'm not sure they'll be good enough to beat the Sixers. But they'll be in the mix for a very long time because they're young, they're athletic. And as we've learned, teams that play together for long periods of time win. That goes a long way. From a New York culture perspective, Jalen Brunson just made himself a lifelong fan favorite. Somebody said we already beat the Sixers. Yes, Robin, you did beat the Sixers. But we have since added Paul George and Andre Drummond and drafted Jared McCain. And Tyrese Maxey is getting better. Embiid is healthy. We re-signed Kelly Oubre. The Sixers might just be better than the Knicks right now. In fact, I think they are better than the Knicks right now. And yes, you did get Mikal Bridges. But again, now y'all have like 19 role players. I love Mikal Bridges. He's a great 3-and-D guy. The Sixers drafted him. Great player. I'm not sure it will make your system deeper for the regular season. I'm not sure in the playoffs when people go to 7 guys, 8 guys, I'm not sure how much better the Knicks are going to be from Mikal Bridges, although they'll certainly have better defense. But that said, Jalen Brunson just made himself a legend in New York. He took $113 million out of his pocket and put it back in the New York Knicks pocket to make the team better. That is a story of sacrifice and team commitment and loyalty that will last forever in New York City. They may build a damn statue of him in front of that building. If they even sniff the NBA Finals, forget a championship, if they even sniff the NBA Finals, he will pass Patrick Ewing and Carmelo Anthony as the most celebrated Knick of the modern era. I'm not talking about Willis Reed. I'm not talking, but of the modern era. He left $113 million on the table. That's wild. Now, so Jalen Brunson is celebrating. And Jalen Brunson might say, look, I don't need the money. He's the son of an NBA player. Let's not forget the contract he did sign is a 4-year, $156 million contract. I'm not that good at math, but that sounds like $44.1 million a year. The difference between $44 million a year and $54 million a year might not be that much when you're that rich. I don't know. But I can't imagine leaving $100 million on the table. Now, some of you will say, well, why would you say that? Well, NBA athletes don't get paid by the people. I mean, they do in the sense that we pay our ticket prices and we watch the games. The revenue is powered by the people. But what I'm saying is the $100 million that is left on the table makes the life of the billionaire easier. The NBA is filled with millionaires who get paid by billionaires. Somebody said Embiid is healthy means you know nothing about NBA. If he's literally playing right now in the Olympics, he's absolutely healthy. If you're saying he won't stay healthy, I agree. He may not stay healthy. He gets injured every year. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm saying if he stays healthy, we win. If he doesn't stay healthy, we don't win. And I'm sure I know more about basketball than you do. So back to the point, the NBA is a bunch of millionaires getting paid by billionaires. So when people say NBA players shouldn't hold out, NBA players shouldn't go on strike, NBA players shouldn't be asking for more money, NBA players should be supporting the team. In general, I agree. 1% should pay their fair share. I have no sympathy for the 1%. But the NBA isn't a normal situation. In the NBA, the athletes are the ones whose labor, to a large extent, is still being alienated, or it's a bunch of workers being alienated from their labor. In other words, the billionaire, if for them to pay Jalen Brunson $100 million, $200 million, $300 million, the billionaire has to write a check, and he ain't writing a check to take a loss. So I don't ever celebrate NBA players for taking a pay cut, and I don't criticize them for not taking a pay cut. Look, if you want to take a pay cut to win, I get it. If you want to take $6 million instead of $7 million, if you want to take, like LeBron said, he would take a pay cut to bring a star to LA, and ultimately there was no star to bring to LA, so he didn't. So he took the max, basically minus a few dollars. LeBron James is a billionaire. Let me use him as an example. LeBron James is a billionaire. If he was super committed to winning another championship, and that was the biggest issue in his life, he could have signed for the minimum and brought a max guy in. He could have brought in Paul George, for example. He could have brought in DeRozan or whoever, right? I would love to see that for LeBron. But I don't demand that of LeBron. The average NBA player is going to play a handful of years. The average NFL, NHL, baseball, MLB player is going to play a handful of years, and whatever money they make has to last them the rest of their lives. And they're putting their body on the line. They're putting their health on the line. They're putting their future on the line for their labor and for the wealth accumulation of a billionaire. And that's right, Orlando, billionaire with a B. So, no, I don't demand that NBA players take pay cuts. Not for us, it's a game, it's entertainment. For them, it's their labor. None of y'all take pay cuts. Now, in the case of Jalen Brunson, I'm impressed by what he did. I'm appreciative of his loyalty. I admire his commitment to winning. Let me say a side note. On the low, the Knicks have gotten so many people to take pay cuts. I'm now wondering, I'm suspicious. I'm just saying, I'm saying it now, so y'all don't say I didn't say it later. I'm suspicious if there's some kind of underhanded backdoor dealing happened where these players are getting paid in other ways, because it's weird that all these Knicks players are taking pay cuts, but that's another story for another time. At the end of the day, Jalen Brunson can do whatever he wants to do. He has every right to take a pay cut. But what I don't want to see is a culture developing where the media and where fans start to criticize athletes or frame them as selfish because they won't leave money on the table. That the next Jalen Brunson or the next whoever gets bashed by the media because he wouldn't leave $50 million or $100 million on the table. We're not talking about a couple million here to win a championship. We're talking about $100 million. That's generational wealth. And he's leaving it on the table to win. Again, hats off to him. I like Jalen. I respect Jalen. I know his father, respect his father, like them all. I think he's a hell of a young man, great kid. But let's not create that. I'm just warning everybody, don't start expecting that from NBA players because it's unreasonable and it's unfair. And as always, it lets the billionaires off the hook. Anyway, family, that is it for Night School. Thank you for watching tonight. I really appreciate y'all watching and supporting me. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the join button so that we can get the media imprint and the footprint that we so desperately need. We need to show corporate media. We have to show corporate media that there's not a single game in town. We need to remind the world that alternative media, grassroots media, Black media, radical media is the most vital space in the world right now to challenge what counts as common sense, to push back against corporate narratives, to fight our oppressors and open enemies with information and correct knowledge. But to do that, we need your support, family. So please make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the join button, because every time you do that, it's helpful. And I said the join button. So if you don't see a join button on YouTube, go to your desktop, find that join button, and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. For as low as $3.99 a month, you can support this channel and help us gain the financial stability we need to hire more staff, to produce more content, to construct a studio, and to do the work that needs to be done. If you can't make a monthly commitment, I totally understand. Please try Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle, and just make a one-time donation for the month. It could be $1. It could be $2. No amount is too low. We appreciate every effort to support the channel and Night School. So again, if it's $1 or $2, it's fine. But if everybody who's watching right now were to drop $10 for the entire month, that's like, what, 30 cents a day? We would meet all of the financial goals for the channel for the month of July. If everybody watching right now were to send $10 to one of these platforms, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, the channel would meet all of its financial goals for the month. Something to consider, y'all. But if you can't, that's okay. Just keep sharing the content, keep spreading the word, and most of all, keep studying, because that's what Night School is all about. I'll see you later. Peace.